It is exceptionally hard to be an elite team in the NFL year after year after year. But it might be even harder to be a fan of that team if they still can't get over the hump year after year after year. Baltimore has gotten so close to immortality so many times, and it's got to be agonizing to essentially be the team rocket of the NFL. They're purple, they dress well, and they've kind of just functionally been an obstacle for whoever the real main character is in any given season. Always the groomsman, never the groom, that kind of thing. But just because this team has always somehow found a way to not win a championship, that doesn't mean that we should just take them off the short list of real championship contenders. Look, if you're new here, this is day 12 of the annual Bootleg Summer Series, and obviously this is one of the most important episodes of the entire event. In each one of these shows, we use film, analytics, salary cap breakdowns, and all manner of nitty-gritty football nerddom to answer the three questions that make up the central pillar of this series. What was this team's identity before? What is their identity now? And what does a successful 2025 season for this team actually look like? For the Ravens, I think we know the answer to that last question. Obviously, it's championship or bust in Baltimore. Again, just like it has been for years at this point. So maybe the better question is this. If this team still manages to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory and not win the Super Bowl again, despite leading the NFL in like almost every single major statistical category that matters again, what happens next? And maybe more importantly, would everybody's jobs still be safe? It's a lot of questions we're going to answer today. So buckle up, Ravens fans. We're going to be reliving some traumas. Isn't that fun? Jay, Autumn, Anthony, please roll the intro.
Welcome back to the Bootleg Summer Preview Series. It's Ravens Day, and with a lot of teams, we say they can't keep getting away with it, can they? With the Ravens, I think that's actually reversed in some cruel way. Like, they can't keep being this good and come up short, can they? 2023, they were number one in bootleg power score. That means they were the most powerful team in the NFL, and they came up short. This year, spoiler alert, they were number two behind only the eventual Super Bowl champions, and they came up short. I mean, collecting
Sensing
division,
a pattern here.
yeah, collecting division titles is nice and all, but the Ravens have got to break through if they keep being this good, don't they?
Well, for starters, it would help if they didn't start the year 0-2 and cost themselves the first seed in the AFC by starting 0-2, including a loss to the Raiders of all teams, and also dropping a game to the Browns and then their customary loss to the Steelers. Like, yeah, they were 12-5, but this team very easily could have also been 15-2 alongside Kansas City. Dare I say 16-1? Like, they weren't that far off from being 16-1. So, do I feel like it was a wasted year? No. Do I feel like they could have had Buffalo come to them instead of going to Buffalo because they were the 3 seed? Do I feel like they could have gotten past the division round by hosting in the division round, by not having the worst secondary in football for the first 10 weeks of the season? Like, yeah, probably. I don't know what compelled them to start the season that way with the duo. I'm being very kind here when I phrase this. The duo of Marcus Williams and Eddie Jackson. Yeah, that was probably insane. And yeah, that probably cost them at least 2 games all by themselves. And did that ultimately lead to them not making it past round 2? You could argue, yes.
Tough team, and windows are short and close quickly in the NFL, and the Ravens have been good for a while now, but if you're like me, you cannot not hear the clock ticking for this team. John Harbaugh is an excellent coach. The roster that Eric DeCosta has put together is extremely good, and they play mostly up to their potential every year. But if you get right to the precipice and you don't get over, it just feels like you've got less and less shots. And Baltimore, I don't want to say they're running out of shots because they've continued to draft well and their coaching is, I would say, elite. But you got to think windows close for every team. And if you keep squandering these opportunities where you're one of the most powerful teams in the league and you don't get through, Ravens fans hear that clock ticking too.
It's more so, how many years can you really bank on the roster being deep enough and your team being healthy enough and your coaching staff being good enough? Like, how many years in a row do you think you can hold that together in the modern NFL? Because I would argue it's like 3 max. The question is, was last year the second year of that 3-year window or the third year of that 3-year window? I guess we'll find out. I mean, let's be honest. You have Lamar Jackson. Your window's always going to be open, like, to a degree, as long as he's your quarterback. But I think back to what they were in 2023. I think back to what they were in 2024, especially in the second half of the year, 2024. I'm like, do you understand how hard it is to have a team that leads the league in like almost every statistical category that matters on offense and defense, and to hold that together? It's almost impossible, like truly almost impossible. And maybe I'm wrong. Like, maybe they will be able to keep this train on the tracks and turn it into, instead of a dynasty of almost, an actual dynasty. They probably should already be there, honestly, looking at how good this team has been. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they'll do it. But even Ravens fans at this point got to be thinking, like, did we blow it? Like, was that it? Like, Kansas City was they weren't dead. Kansas City was as vulnerable as you could ever hope for in the middle of a Patrick Mahomes era. And they still went 15-2. And they still beat you, and you still didn't make it past the division round. Like, if I was a Ravens fan, I'd be like, well, what do we have to do at this point?
We begged for balance. They finally got it with Todd Monken, who brought the offense to what we always thought it could or should be, and it still wasn't enough for the last 2 years. So 2024 results, again, we're not going to call it a wasted season. If you go 12-5, you win your division, you're 6-2 at home, 6-3 on the road, and you go 4-1 in your last 5 games, you had a very good year in the NFL in any year. But for Ravens fans at this point, again, the burden of having been a quality, well-run organization for a long time is good enough isn't good enough. And the aforementioned power score, we take passing offense, passing defense, rushing defense, all by EPA. Then points scored and points allowed. We take those 6 numbers, we just assign their league ranks. You're going to hear a lot of low numbers here, folks. Passing offense, number 1 in the NFL. Rushing offense, number 2 in the NFL. That alone is an incredibly rare combo. Pass defense was 13th, despite the struggles we're going to talk about very shortly. Rush defense was 4th. Points scored 3rd, points allowed 9th. You add all that stuff up, divide by 6. This was the second most powerful team behind only Philadelphia in the entire league. And it still didn't get them over the hump.
When it comes to the pass defense, we're going to spend a pretty significant amount of time on this, because that really was like the tumor on this organization last year was the pass defense. Yes, they ended up at 13, but they were not 13 the entire year. In fact, they were the worst in the first half of the season. And then they somehow ended up being the best. Not even somehow, we know how. They ended up being the best in the second half of the season, and that just kind of averaged out to 13. It's not the way that you want to be 13, but they ended up there. And I think when you look at the entirety of the Ravens season, you have to split it up into weeks 1 through 10 and then weeks 11 onward, because those were not the same football team. If you're looking at the secondary, weeks 1 through 10, it was a lot of Eddie Jackson at safety. It was a lot of Marcus Williams at safety. Brandon Stevens was arguably the worst corner in the NFL. And all 3 of them together in the same secondary was like football terrorism. It was truly unwatchable. Well, unless you're like hate watching it or you just find bad football funny. But for me, somebody who knows what good Ravens defense is supposed to look like, watching those 3 in a Ravens uniform was jarring, because I can't remember ever seeing a Ravens secondary play that poorly. They could not handle being matched up one-on-one, especially in Brandon Stevens' case. Like, he gave up jump balls like you wouldn't believe week after week after week. Marcus Williams couldn't cover it all. Eddie Jackson, R.I.P. Eddie, I love you for what you did early in Chicago in your career. Like, washed is a compliment. Like, he was even worse than Williams, arguably. And when you have all three of those on the field at the same time, what it led to is weeks 1 through 10, they were 30th in pass defense EPA per play allowed. So the same stat you just listed off being 13th. They were 30th in the league. Weeks 1 through 10, they were 25th in terms of successful pass play percentage allowed. They were really good against the run, even early on in the year, because they weren't relying on their corners and safeties to be their enforcers against the run. They had a good D-line. They had their linebackers. So they were second in run defense EPA per play allowed first half of the season. You get to yards per pass attempt allowed. They were 28th. You get to explosive pass play percentage allowed. They were dead last in the NFL. And they were like a little below average in pressure percentage at 19th. But it's not what you want, but it's not like the worst. So then you go to weeks 11 plus. Keep in mind, they were bottom, either near the bottom or at the bottom of the league in every single category, right? They go from 30th in pass defense EPA per play allowed to first in pass defense EPA per play allowed, weeks 11 plus. They were first in successful pass play percentage allowed. They were first in yards per attempt allowed. They were ninth in explosive pass play percentage allowed, so they went from 32nd to ninth. And even their pass rush improved a little bit. They were 15th in pressure percentage over the back half of the season. So that is the difference between early season Ravens that lost to the Raiders and the Browns compared to late season Ravens, which were the threshing machine that we all know and love. So then you have to ask yourself, okay, what changed? Like, was it a huge schematic difference? Were the game plans better? Like, what was the mate? Because, like, how do you go from 32nd to first in anything? Literally in like a 3-week span. That's just ridiculous, right? And yes, there was some schematic changes. They played a lot more middle field close structures in the back half of the year. They went from 48% playing middle field close, meaning either cover 1 or cover 3, to 60.9% middle field close. So it was a lot more man coverage, a lot more cover 3 in the back half of the year. But truly, the change that mattered most, and Ravens fans know this story well, Marcus Williams, gone. Eddie Jackson, gone. Insert Kyle Hamilton and Ardarius Washington to play the deep safety roles instead. They spent the first half of the year playing more down low. Second half of the year, Ravens coaching staff were like, we cannot deal with this shit anymore. Like, we're giving up more explosive passes than everybody else in the league. So they moved their two best safeties back to actually playing safety the majority of the time. And that was kind of it as far as like the main catalyst for the improvement. And so again, if you're looking at weeks 1 through 10 versus weeks 11 plus, this team went from giving up the most deep crossing routes, post routes, seam routes in the entire league to the intermediate and deep middle of the field. Their passer rating allowed on those routes was 146.4, EJ. Holy shit.
Free yards. I mean, everybody just show up and throw it over the middle.
And you know what's crazy? That was only second worst in the league. The Panthers were even worse at 150. But still, like, if you're in a conversation with the Panthers for being worst pass defense, like, that's how bad it was. And so after the switch, and you had Ardarius and Kyle playing more as their deep safeties, weeks 11 plus, that passer rating on those routes in that area of the field dropped to 38.6, lowest allowed in the league. All that to say, the personnel decisions that this coaching staff made saved their season. And yet, the personnel decisions that they made that put them in that hole to begin with, because I have to imagine if they were that bad in week 2, they were probably that bad in training camp. That lineup decision is what put them in the hole, which then probably caused them to not get the second seed. I don't know if they would have gotten the first seed, but they at least missed out on the second seed because of dropping those games to Cleveland and to Vegas, which then arguably led to them not making it to the conference championship again. So yes, credit to the coaching staff for adjusting, but I can't believe that they let that secondary walk out there looking like that to start the year. Like that is almost coaching malpractice. Like they were that bad. They could not have not known that they were that bad going into week 1.
And they put I'm not going to say young coach in terms of years necessarily, but young coach in terms of position, a brand new DC on the coals with that decision. And possibly a veteran coaching staff was a little slow with the hook. And I appreciate loyalty. I appreciate the runway to turn things around. But yeah, after week 5, after week 6, after week 7, not week 10, like, okay, enough's enough. We need to change this up. And this is me. We can put the digital Ray-Bans on me right now. This is my Ardarius Washington take coming home to roost years later. Love that guy coming out in the draft. And I wonder what Zach Orr bought him for his birthday because, fair to say, Zach Orr probably wouldn't still have his job if Ardarius Washington wasn't just Ardarius Washington.
I just think last year's Ravens were the ultimate case study of why safeties matter. I know a lot of teams don't think you should pay safeties. I know a lot of teams do not list them as premium positions, and I understand why. But when you have bad safety play, you feel it. It's just like having bad center play. Like you don't realize how important it is until you are like literally the bottom of the league in that position group. Hence why they drafted Malachi Starks. It's like, we're never going through that shit again. Like that was terrible. We don't want to do that again. But I want anybody who thinks that safeties don't matter to just look at what happened in Baltimore last year, because you will understand how wrong that is.
And I love the fact that the pass rush also got better in the second half of the year. Who knew? Good coverage helps pass rush. Good pass rush helps coverage. Everybody's
Shocker.
happy. Yeah. Everybody's happy when we start spouting NFL truisms. Why? Because they're true. There's a reason. If we talk about that power structure that made all those decisions, Eric DeCosta, the general manager, has continued the legacy of drafting from Baltimore, which was led by a Hall of Famer, and he has carried that on, I would say, admirably. This is not a roster that is either bereft of talent or particularly top-heavy. They have good depth that they continue to develop with this draft and develop strategy that they've had in Baltimore for a very long time. John Harbaugh, the head coach, one of the longest-tenured head coaches in the NFL at this point. The assistant head coach, interestingly enough, is the running backs coach, Willie Taggart. Offensive coordinator Todd Monken, we talked about him briefly at the beginning of the podcast in terms of having brought balance. I was going to say having brought balance to the force, but having brought balance to Baltimore's offense, which is kind of the same thing. For years, it was a run-heavy Greg Roman scheme with one wide receiver utilized and heavy tight end usage. Other than that, they didn't seem to be able to develop beyond that shell, and it held them back to the point where, again, and maybe we should have had the heads up that John Harbaugh has a little bit too long of a leash with his Greg Roman treatment. Maybe that led to some of the safeties hanging around and being able to play longer than they should have this last year. As far as the other coordinators, the defensive coordinator, Zach Orr, honestly, one of the great redemption stories of last year in the NFL was absolutely bottoming out. We thought that there would be some struggles. If you listened to this podcast last summer, we said, hey, like, he's an understudy. He understands the defense. He knows these players. He's not new to the organization. This is not a fresh start. There could be some bumps in the road, but he'll be fine. And about week 6, we looked at each other and went, is he going to be fine? Doesn't seem like he's fine.
There's bumps in the road, and then there's just like a giant pothole that completely fucks up your axle. And that's what they drove over for 10 weeks straight.
Yeah, the bottom completely dropped out. Suffice it to say, we were genuinely worried about Zach Orr and his prospect as his defensive coordinator. And then, as we laid out, the world changed. The special teams coordinator is Chris Horton. Notable coaches on offense. I haven't done this before, but I think it's warranted. This is going to be in memory of Coach Joe Delisandris, 45-year coaching vet who was Baltimore's OL coach for the last 7 seasons. He passed away last season. George Warhop took over coaching the OL and retains that job this year. He has 29 years of NFL coaching experience, so it's not like they're getting a newbie. Greg Lewis, former NFL wide receiver, is the wide receivers coach, and T. Martin, Former quarterback from University of Tennessee and other stops, is the quarterback's coach. On defense and special teams, Chuck Pagano. Yes, that Chuck Pagano is the senior defensive assistant and the secondary coach, so he has sort of umbrella authority over the back half of that defense. Chuck Smith is the pass rush coach. He was one of the first that was hired from being a pass rush trainer to be a team's pass rush coach. And Donald DeLessio is the DB's coach. And I say that because when we look at guys like Ardarius Washington and they develop in this system, yes, it's other coaches on the staff like Chuck Pagano with a wealth of experience coaching secondaries, but it is also Donald's job to make sure these guys develop. And when they do, they deserve credit. So that's why he's on the list.
I want to zoom in mostly on Todd Monken as well as George Warhop, Willie Taggart, all kind of working together and how they built this Ravens run game. Because it's easy to just look at number 2 in EPA per play, all the explosives, the totals, Derrick Henry having arguably the greatest rushing season for a 30-plus-year-old running back ever, and just say, yeah, the Ravens could run the ball. But yes, they can, but it's not just about that. It's the way that they ran the ball, like from a schematic perspective, a philosophical perspective. The way this team runs the ball is so intentional, and it's so well thought out, and it's not just like a 3 yards in a cloud of dust type thing of like, oh, we have this 240, 250-pound running back, we're going to slam him into you over and over again. It's not about that. It's about getting into a defensive lineman's head and making them second guess themselves. And through that, like through kind of their first half play calling tendencies, opening up other stuff in the second half. And what I mean by that is, if you're looking at this Ravens run game schematically, like what concepts they focus on, 37% of all of their first half runs are either counter, power, pin and pull, or trap. All of those are different kind of schemes that take advantage of penetration. For a trap play, for instance, that was the big run that Henry had in the first Buffalo game. I think it was like the first carry. They hit a big trap run, and he just took off running because he's Derrick Henry, and he's still big and fast and everything like that. Those kinds of blocking schemes take advantage of penetration by basically inviting you in and then either hitting you from the side to open up a crease, or in some cases, if you're looking at like pin and pulls or power, when you try to penetrate and somebody's down blocking against you, it just kind of takes you out of the gap, and they kind of use your own momentum against you to put you where they want you to be. Maybe I'm not explaining that correctly. I could figure out some visual aids here, but penetration is really good against zone run games. It's not typically how you want to play against counter, power, pin and pull, trap. Anything that involves pullers, down blocks, traps, whams, anything like that, penetration is not how you want to handle that. So the Ravens first half, again, 37% of all their runs were like that. You go into the zone schemes that are not so great against penetration. About 45% of all their runs were zone schemes. Go to the second half now. After they would hit all of these explosives, taking advantage of penetration and taking advantage of aggression. Keep in mind, they called those types of runs third most in the NFL in the first half. They had the fourth most explosives in the NFL in the first half. After doing that over and over and over again in quarter one and quarter two, they would come back in the second half and totally flip it on its head, right? So 54% of all of their runs in the second half were zone schemes. And then they lowered everything else from 37% down to 30%. What does this mean? It means that when they would pop all of those explosives in the first half by taking advantage of aggression and taking advantage of a defensive lineman essentially taking himself out of the play by trying to penetrate and then either getting whammed or getting down blocked into oblivion or anything like that, taking advantage of all their misdirection, using Lamar's own legs as a threat to then kind of get guys leaning the wrong way. When they would set those defenses up in the first half, they would second guess themselves by the time they got to quarter number 3. So they're not penetrating as hard. They're kind of playing, I don't want to say passively, but kind of passively, because they aren't exactly sure if they're going to be hit by a down block, or maybe if they're going to be the target of the double team, or if they do get a free run, they kind of second guess it because it's like, am I busting the play, or do they want me to be here? I'm about to get ear-holed by a tight end. And so when you kind of slow down the defensive line through those types of runs, it then makes your zone run game that much better in the second half. And we saw that bear out in the numbers. If you're looking at first half zone runs, yards per carry for the Ravens, it was 4.5. Pretty decent. Second half, 6.5 yards per carry on zone runs. And that's not just because Derrick Henry wears you down. It's because of the way that this team, structured their run game and the intentionality of it, of we are going to scare you into not being aggressive through scheme so that we can then hit you with our actual bread and butter, which is the zone run game. Like, I just thought it was a brilliant way to structure a run game. And I think it highlighted everything that is so special about this coaching staff, especially on offense. Like, it wasn't an accident that they were better than everybody else. Like, yeah, they have a bunch of talent and they have, an MVP caliber quarterback, but it's how the coaching staff wields all those tools, not just in the first half, but in the second half, to put his players in the best possible positions to succeed. That is how you end up with a top 2 offense in the league. So shout out to Monken, shout out to all the position coaches. Like, they did a phenomenal job last year.
My favorite thing about Todd Monken's offense overall is balance. I think behind probably only Ben Johnson, he is one of the most balanced play callers in the entire NFL. And when we talk about balance, you can talk about the umbrella at the top level. Everybody thinks balance between run and pass, but you familiar with fractals?
I was not a math major, EJ. So
okay.
No.
So fractals are a mathematical equation that are basically endless. So if you dive into a graphic representation of fractals, there are more fractals. There are fractals upon fractals, and you can keep going forever. It's a self-regenerating system as you go deeper and deeper into it. And so you can take any piece of a Todd Monken offense, you can take the run game and look at exactly what you did and say, okay, this is sort of ever-changing and we are ahead of it. And then how does that balance with the pass game? Well, you can look at the deep passing game or the screen game and, again, dive into it. And it's how each of those things are deployed. And when they're deployed, he has a ton of weapons. He's got Lamar Jackson. He's got Derrick Henry. He's got Zay. He's got a good tight end. Like, he's got all this stuff, but instead of just leaning into it and going, we're just going to, like you said, hammer Derrick Henry because he's Derrick Henry, they go, no, we're going to use Derrick Henry to his ultimate effect by throwing changeups, by running play action off that after we've, basically confused you with power concepts and then zone concepts, and then we're going to go play action, and you're just going to be like, all right, what the hell do we do? And that's what defenses were against the Ravens offense last year. And a huge, huge reason that's the case is because Monken is one of the great offensive play calling alchemists in the NFL, and all those numbers that we've rattled off at the top of the podcast just reflect that.
He was basically just making the fastball more effective by starting with the changeup, and it was a good ass changeup, EJ. Like, people couldn't hit that either, but they really couldn't hit the fastball once that changeup was thrown. I think the analogy holds. But anyway, if we're getting into free agency and what this team has done to ideally get themselves finally over the hump, and really the hump is just Buffalo and Kansas City. As far as what this team did to kind of iterate and retool their roster, and again, if you want every single transaction they made, that's over on the infographic, but we're just going to pull out the notable ones for this. Nelson Aguilar is gone. Tre'Davious White is gone. Patrick McCarry signed for $12.5 million in Jacksonville. That one hurt, but we also kind of knew it was coming. Brandon Stevens somehow got $12 million from the Jets. Make that one make sense. Jesus.
Mama, let your babies grow up to be corners.
Mama, let your babies grow up to be bad corners, because if bad corners are making $12 million, if they want somebody to go out there and give up a go ball every 5 plays, like, I could do it for less than $12 million, but okay, sure thing, Jets. We haven't even got to the AFC East yet, but trust me, not a great signing. Malik Harrison Linebacker went to the Steelers as well for $5 million. I thought that was actually a pretty decent deal for Malik Harrison. As far as who got re-signed or extended, Derrick Henry is extended once again at $15 million a year. 31 years young, and you would never know it based on how he runs. Ronnie Stanley. There was some trepidation that Ronnie Stanley was not going to be long for Baltimore. And I know a lot of Ravens fans were very nervous about that, but he is back at $20 million a year. Rashad Bateman got extended again. I think this is his second extension in Baltimore now for $12.3 million. And Patrick Ricard, not the largest, because Matlock might be bigger, but one of the largest fullbacks in NFL history at $2.8 million. And then Ardarius Washington, an EJ Snyder favorite, $3.26 million. I'll tell you what, for what he did for them last year, like not single-handedly, him and Kyle, but for everything that he did to make this defense watchable in the second half, or not even watchable, like they were great in the second half of the year, but to get them from being ludicrously bad to top 5 in the NFL by the second half of the year, like $3.26 million seems light for what he gave them last year.
You know what it is? This is the absolute poster for draft pedigree sticking with you in the NFL. For people that say it doesn't matter, I give you the case of Ardarius Washington. Now, Ardarius Washington went undrafted. He was not a draft pick for the Ravens. He was an undrafted free agent that we highlighted as a very good pickup. But this is draft pedigree. If Ardarius Washington was a first or second round pick, or even a third round pick, a day 2 pick, and he performed like he did last year and was a linchpin of this secondary, turning around and becoming one of the best in the NFL, do you think they could have signed him for twice that? And my answer is absolutely not. If he was a second round safety and had the year he had last year, his price tag is going to be $5-6 million bucks, easy, like going away.
He would have got at least what Hufanga got,
easily,
like at least.
But draft pedigree hangs on you like a stink, and it goes both ways. If you were a first round draft pick that, again, bombs out at every stop, you will keep getting chances. People will keep taking swings for you because you were a first round pick. If you're an undrafted free agent and you screw up once, you're gone. If you succeed, you're going to get paid half of what your contemporaries get paid because of what they thought of you when you came into the league. It is a real thing. It is not fair. It is not kind. It is not anything else. But there is no way in the world that Ardarius Washington signs for 3-2 after the year he had last year. Just absolute nonsense if he was picked on day 1 or day 2.
Brandon Stevens makes like almost 4 times as much. Are you fucking insane? Like, what are we doing? What are we doing as a society? Come on.
We used to be
It's
a proper
ridiculous.
country. No, we weren't. Anyways.
This is the worst thing that's happened to America this summer. No.
Oh, I don't think so. I don't think so.
All right, third-party additions. Jair Alexander. Yeah, that'll fix everything. And then John Jenkins, the ageless John Jenkins at 36 years young. DeAndre Hopkins is also a Baltimore Raven now at $5 million. And Chidobe Awuzie, also brought in from Tennessee. Not 100% sure that any of these are really needle movers. Like Jair Alexander, if we're talking like 2021, Jair Alexander, yeah, great. Love that. DeAndre Hopkins, 2021, DeAndre Hopkins, sign me up. Even Chidobe. But this feels very Steelers-y with all the veterans that Pittsburgh brought in, where it's like, if this was like COVID era, this would be a super team. But do any of these guys really move the needle at this point? Not for me.
More role players at this point, and hopefully I think they think in their secondary stabilizers. John Jenkins is the role player I was talking about, who is very good at one thing still. It is a skill that's valued lightly in the NFL. You can draft those guys in the 4th or 5th round. You want a big interior run stuffer, you're going to get those guys in the 4th or 5th round, and if not, you can sign them in free agency for like $1.5 million. So NFL teams need them. If you don't have them, your run defense absolutely shows it, but they are not, quote unquote, expensive in terms of draft capital or free agency dollars. In terms of the draft, it is a big one, 11 picks. However, 5 of those are 6th round picks. Only 3 of them happened on day 1 or 2. So the bulk of this draft is from round 4 to round 7. And again, the real bulk of it is 5 6th round picks. I don't know that I've seen that before, but the Ravens managed it this year. We will start up top. Number 1, pick number 27 overall, Malachi Starks, the safety out of Georgia. Multi-talented SEC, multi-year performer who we got to see up close on the field at the combine and were terribly impressed. I think both of us said at that point, I don't care how he tests. Look at how he moves. And his movement patterns on the field in Indy and in game tape, quite frankly, were very different. He was one of my gems this year. Just a very good football player that I think projects very similarly to Brian Branch. Although he plays farther away from the line of scrimmage more regularly than Branch does, he also had a ton of snaps up close, either in the strong safety alignment or in nickel. And there are a lot of corollaries between Brian Branch, both in body type and play style, between Malachi Starks and Brian Branch. So very good pick for them. Another weapon that they can use in their secondary. And as we learned last year, can never have too many good safeties, or maybe just enough good safeties.
Just not having bad safeties would be a start.
Right. Somewhere in the middle is fine. We fully appreciate that approach to roster building, but if you have bad ones, it's going to hurt. Round 2, pick number 59, one of the most controversial picks in the entire draft, Mike Green, the outside linebacker or edge from Marshall. If he had a clean off-field history, he would have been probably the first edge rusher off the board, certainly in my book. He has tremendous talent on the field. I went into my Mike Green evaluation thinking, yes, he's a very good pass rusher, but I don't think he's necessarily as complete as I want him to be. I did my full film study. I came away saying I have very few reservations about Mike Green, the player, on the field. Now, separating that from the off-field issues, which were serious, the reason he lasted till number 59, and I would say the Ravens were even a little bit early in taking that gamble compared to where a lot of teams had him, which was completely off the board. If he can keep his nose clean off the field, stay out of trouble, he is going to have a tremendous opportunity in this Baltimore rotation. He is not currently listed as a starter. He's behind Odafe Owe. And he can sit there and learn, come in as a situational pass rusher, and he will make a difference from a football skill set perspective. He is a tremendous pass rusher, multiple moves, good bend, great hand usage, very savvy, and plays the run as well. He is not a liability there. So he will earn playing time on the field if he can keep on the straight and narrow off the field. The last of their day 2 picks was round 3, number 91, Emory Jones, the tackle out of LSU, player I like a lot, who is pretty talented. And I think will work into their tackle rotation, could even eventually be a starter for them. I don't know if that's going to happen right away. He does have things to work on, but he is very gifted and has great tools. So I thought that was a good value at number 91, top 100 pick. Again, you're getting down to the sort of twilight zone of tackles where if you need them to start any kind of soon, you're not going to get any more. And Emory Jones is a, I think, worthwhile gamble at that point. Then we move into day 3 picks, and boy, there's a lot of them. So we'll start with round 4, number 129, Teddy Buchanan, a linebacker out of Cal, who we both really like, an absolute hammer coming downhill. I think he fits the Ravens culture and sort of attacking style on defense very, very well. The Cal defense in general was one of the most underrated storylines of the 2025 draft.
Dude, they had like 5 NFL players. It was crazy good defense.
And a couple of UDFAs as well. So absolutely stacked defense that didn't get a lot of attention because their conference just dissolved. That's not their fault. Teddy Buchanan in a what I would call middling inside linebacker class was a player I think has some upside. And again, based on his landing spot, where he fits and how that team uses and prioritizes linebackers, I love it for them. Round 5, number 141, a compensatory pick they got from the Titans. Carson Vincent, the tackle out of Alabama A&M. Again, small school prospect with big school tools who is going to need some time to develop, but could end up being even better than his SEC counterpart, Emory Jones. Again, given development, we're not sure about that, but does he have the tools to hang at the NFL? He absolutely does. Is he going to need some seasoning to get there? He is. A very, very worthwhile spot to take a gamble like that, because outside of quarterback, if you end up with a starting tackle out of round 5 or lower, you win as an organization.
Zach Tom. Like, it's one of the most valuable picks by anybody in the last 5 years. Zach Tom. Elite starting right tackle that they got on early day 3. 100% correct.
Charles Leno, Braxton Jones. Like, if you get a starting NFL tackle late in the draft, it is the second best lottery ticket you can pick up. All right, now we start off with the round 6 picks. Again, hang with us. There's 5 of them. First one, number 178, a pick they got from the Titans. Bilal Cohn, the cornerback from Western Michigan. I really like Bilal Cohn. Very aggressive, physical corner who, again, didn't play necessarily the toughest schedule, but did go to the Senior Bowl and compete really, really well. I think he fits the model of what a Ravens corner needs to be in terms of being physical, being able to play press, being able to play down the boundary with his back either towards the quarterback or away from. He's better with his back away, I think, in straight man. But he's a corner I think could develop. And again, round 6. Like, this is a worthwhile swing. Next pick, 186, pick they got from the Jets. Tyler Loop, the kicker from Arizona. It's a kicker. If you're going to spend a pick on a kicker round 6 or later, I'm fine with it. Did I scout Tyler Loop? I did not.
I was going to say, like, you of all people do not scout kickers. I'll scout punters, less so kickers. But I love scouting punters.
I'm not scouting kickers. I'm just going to say don't spend anything near a 4th round pick on a kicker unless you are 1,000% sure that they are a generational talent. So,
well, the last time somebody spent a 3rd round pick on a generational kicker was Roberto Aguayo, who was, spoiler alert, not a generational kicker. So even when you're sure,
which is why you don't do it.
Yeah.
And you can get them in the 6th round or later, or as UDFAs, like we talked about yesterday. So again, another round 6 pick, number 203, LeJontay Wester, the wide receiver from Colorado, who I'm going to let you talk about because you're really excited about LeJontay Wester as a player.
I think he's a really dynamic, like, number 4, number 5 type of receiver, like a complementary piece. I look at him similar to, like, this is going to sound not super positive, but in the context here, it makes a lot of sense. MVS, but can catch more. But, like, you know how MVS, where it's like his best role is like somebody's wide receiver 4, you roll him in, you run a couple deep posts, maybe you hit one. Even if he gets like 1 50-yard catch in a game, he's done his job. He flipped the field. He set us up for a scoring opportunity. Like, that's what LeJontay Wester is. He should probably not ever be in like your top 3 receivers in receptions. Because if he's in your top 3, you've probably got bigger problems. But as far as like a really dynamic wide receiver 4 or 5 that can just give you a big pop vertically once or twice a game, and like that's his job. See you next Sunday. Again, you're getting that at like pick 203. I think it's a great value. He's not super big, which is also why I don't think he should get a high volume of touches, because I don't know if he can really hold up to that. But considering the deep ball tracking ability and the speed, like, throw him a couple deep posts and see if he comes down with it.
I like him because he helps round out their room. He's another skill set that can play in, and we'll see whether that's this year or next year. But again, we're talking about round 6 picks here. I know we're like, oh, it's the 5th or 6th. No, this is a down the board pick. You're talking about picks that a lot of NFL fans say don't matter. I think LeJontay Wester has a chance to matter as a 6th round pick, and that makes him a success all by himself. Again, yes, we're still in the 6th round, folks. Pick number 210, a compensatory pick. Aeneas Peebles, the defensive tackle from Virginia Tech. A player I did not think, quite honestly, was going to be there in the 6th round. It's mostly because of size. He's 6 feet tall. He's 282 pounds, but 37 total pressures, 31 hurries. A player who is incredibly disruptive. And he is somebody I think you kind of have to make a role for. He's not necessarily plug and play. You're going to have to work around his weaknesses, but when you get him in there on a third down pass rush package, I really don't care where you put him or how you align him. He's going to win even in the NFL. He's not going to be an every down, get him in there, play the run, wear down, do 700 snaps a year type player. But again, in the 6th round for an organization like the Ravens that has made a living, quite frankly, on defense of finding players later in the draft, especially on day 3, and saying they have these 1 or 2 qualities, these 1 or 2 skills that we can leverage, and we know how to do that. They have a great track record of doing that, and Aeneas Peebles is a worthwhile shot for that alone.
I mean, he's going to be the guy that, comes in rotation with Nnamdi Madubuike and does similar stuff to Nnamdi Madubuike. Not as well, because I don't think he's as big or as explosive as Nnamdi, but he ain't that far off as far as fluidity, lateral agility, and the fact that you can line him up all the way inside, looking at like all the fronts that they use on third down, because they'll kind of move Nnamdi all over the place. They'll put him as like a true zero and then have him be the looper on a stunt. If you want a guy who can line up really far inside and then still get all the way outside as a looper on a stunt, or be the contain player from way the hell over here and end up way the hell over there, like it takes an athletic interior defensive lineman to be able to do those kind of exotic pressures, and that's part of why Madubuike is so good for them, is you can line him up anywhere and still have him do any role from any spot. And I think Peoples is going to be that kind of player for them. He probably should never be on the field on first or second down, which is why he's more a rotational guy. But if you need to give Nnamdi a blow in a pass rush situation, you bring in Peoples and he can do all that stuff.
Last pick in round 6, I promise, folks. 212, also a compensatory selection. Robert Longerbeam, the cornerback from Rutgers, very physical player. And their final pick in the 2025 NFL Draft, round 7, number 243, Garrett Dellinger, the guard from LSU. They've had a pretty good run of picking guards on day 3 and having them contribute, whether it's a backup as a swing or eventually as a starter. And, is Dellinger the next one? Again, if I was him, I wouldn't be sad about going to Baltimore, put it that way.
And if you're paying attention through the entire summer series, you're going to see a lot of LSU offensive linemen drafted. That was kind of a general theme for LSU this year, mainly because in 2019 they had that whole group get drafted, and then all these guys came in and they grew up, and now they're all getting drafted. 4 LSU offensive linemen got drafted in this same class. And then I guess we could throw Mason Taylor in there too, because he's a tight end, so he'll end up right next to him. So again, 5 people in charge with protecting Nussmeier got drafted, which means if Nussmeier then balls out again this year, you can't use the excuse, well, he was surrounded by LSU offensive linemen. They're all in the NFL now. So, the fact that team didn't win more than they have in the last couple of years, with 80% of their pass protectors being in the league and also having Jaden Daniels and also the receivers they had, kind of a blown opportunity. Anyway, this isn't a college football podcast, but it is a podcast about blown opportunities, apparently. Bring it full circle.
Oh, boy.
Notable UDFAs. They brought in Jay Higgins, the linebacker from Iowa. Gerard Christian Lichtenhahn, I believe is the correct pronunciation. We saw him at Shrine Bowl. Gigantic tackle from Oregon State.
Hulking
kinda
would be
stiff.
my adjective.
Yeah, kind of stiff, but fuck, he is big. He's very Ravensy as far as how they like their tackles to be built. And then Jared Penning, the offensive tackle from Northern Iowa. Is there a relation to Trevor?
Same school.
Because how many NIU tackles are last name Penning?
Yep.
Right.
Correct.
So that's interesting. I have two brothers play the same position, make the league in a 3-4 year span. All right. I know this episode sounded fairly negative overall. It wasn't meant to be. It really wasn't. Like, this is one of the best teams in the NFL. I think if you're looking at this Ravens roster and you're looking at their output from last year and how good they were, especially from weeks 11 on, and how good the quarterback is, like, we didn't even really do our yearly Lamar Jackson discussion where we just sit there in awe for 10 minutes of how good he is. But if you're looking at how amazing this team is, it seems odd that we were very critical throughout this entire show. But you have to understand the expectations are what they are now, and short of winning the Super Bowl, this team is probably going to get criticized because at some point you got to shit or get off the pot, right? Like, you have the team, you have the coaching staff, you have the quarterback, you have everything you need. And so every single year when we sit here and we praise and we praise and we praise and they go out there and they don't do it, yeah, we get frustrated. And at that point, we get nitpicky because we're frustrated. And I don't mean to sound down on the Ravens. I think that they are still one of the 4 best teams in the NFL. But being one of the 4 best teams in the NFL and ending up as one of the final 4 teams in the NFL are 2 very different discussions. And this team consistently has fallen short in the playoffs relative to other teams that I think that they are better than on paper. Like, I think they're better than the Chiefs. I think towards the end of the year, they were better than the Bills. And yet, both those teams were in the AFC Championship and the Ravens weren't. So I know it sounds like I'm disillusioned. I know it sounds like I'm nitpicking, but Ravens fans are over it too. Like, I don't think Ravens fans are giving this team any leeway to fail this year. Like, they have to win the Super Bowl or Ravens fans will consider it a failure. And I don't blame them for that mentality. I really don't. Because right now, this is the dynasty that never was. And if they end up as a team that never gets a ring in this era, I think we're going to look back at them similar to how, we looked at like the mid-2000s Chargers, and we're going to look at them similar to most of Aaron Rodgers' career with the Packers, and to a degree, the Peyton Manning Colts, where it's like, you wasted that. You wasted it. Except at least those teams got a ring. Well, Chargers didn't, but I don't know. Like, you know what I'm saying here, where it's like, it feels like I don't care if they're elite anymore. I care if they capitalize on the window and actually get the hardware.
Yeah, the Peyton Manning Colts was my absolute comp for them because they need to win one. And there was a same building sentiment about Peyton and the Colts. Like, they're so good. They dominate. Their offense is amazing. Their defense is very good. When are they going to get one? And if they hadn't gotten one, we would talk about that team very similarly to how we talk about the Ravens right now. And flip side, if the Ravens do get one, we will talk about this team like those Colts teams. Led by a great quarterback, very good at the top of the league for years and years, finally got over the hump and won one. And while we didn't gush about Lamar Jackson today, do you know when we're going to do that?
Friday.
Yeah, that's right. Tomorrow, when we do our division recap episode over on Patreon for all of our patrons there. Yeah, we're going to be gushing about Lamar Jackson. He's going to be featuring prominently in several of those categories. So if you want that and you're a Ravens fan, check it out. If you're not a patron already, go ahead and become one. You'll get an extra podcast every week during the summer season, plus access to all the infographics, which are about 15 pages of data for every single team that drops on the same day that their podcast drops on the summer preview series. But I don't know. I don't think we're down on this team. I think we really like this team. We just want it to be what we think it really is, which is a championship team.
Yeah, they should be. They really should be. They are one of the best football teams I've ever seen, like, truly. And I think Ravens fans deserve to see this group be immortalized like that, so that people remember how good they are, and they aren't just like a trivia question, So hopefully you enjoyed this, Ravens fans, and I'm sure a lot of you share the same sentiment. Again, come back tomorrow on the Patreon for more Lamar Jackson praise. And then next week, we are hitting the NFC North. And I think that means, is Bears Monday? Oh, God, Bears is Monday.
Bears Monday, baby.
I don't know if I'm emotionally ready for that one.
We are not.
We'll find a way. We'll find a way. So come back Monday for Bears, and then we got the rest of the NFC North after that, and we will see you then.